Good afternoon and welcome to Politics and the Pulpit here on your hometown station. It's good to be with you. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, back for another opportunity to look at the world through the lens of God's infallible word. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We've got two guests, one of which is no stranger to us, Eric Early, who ran for AG for California, and then, of course, also for Senate, and lost to Steve Garvey. We'll be talking to Eric at the bottom of the hour about what's going on with Steve Garvey, considering we really can't get Garvey on the show. So the next best thing is to talk to his competitor, if you will. And then at the top of the hour, in just a few seconds here, we're going to be joined by Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, journalist with Red State. She, of course, was on just a few weeks ago, and we're glad to have her back on again. We've got lots to talk about today. If you are in Southern California, it is definitely a beautiful day in Southern California, and it's going to be beautiful for the next several days. So enjoy the weather. And also, I think in the month of June, for those of you who listen regularly here to Politics in the Pulpit, we will have on June 5th, that's the first Wednesday of June, we will have DA, well, I shouldn't say DA, that was a bit presumptuous, but DA hopeful Nathan Hochman will be joining the show. And then somewhere down the road, probably the end of June, early July, we're also going to, Lord willing, see if we can get Dennis Prager on. And I think that'll be an excellent interview. I don't know if that'll be in studio or a call-in, but either way, looking forward to possibly getting Dennis Prager snagged onto Politics and the Pulpit. On the line, joining us right now from this great state of Alabama is Jennifer Oliver O'Connell. She's a journalist with Red State. She's an opinion writer at the 1819 News, and she's a yoga instructor at As the Girl Turns. Jennifer, how are you?
Hey, how are you, Pastor Jerry?
Listen, when you call your little yoga thing As the Girl Turns, is that a little bit of a pun on the old soap opera As the World Turns?
Yes, it is, for anybody who actually remembers it.
and the only reason why I remember that is, first of all, my mom used to watch that show religiously. And then second of all, I remember it was parodied on the Carol Burnett show. They used to say As the Stomach Turns. So
As the Stomach Turns, I think, yeah. That was great.
So are you in the great state of Alabama right now?
Yes, I am. It's storming. We're getting the residual of all of these tornadoes, but thankfully no tornadoes. But
well, I'm glad that you are safe, and I know that there are other parts of the country are reeling from the tornadic activity. But when it comes to politics, unfortunately, no one in the United States is unscathed from this current administration. And I wanted to start off real quickly, Jennifer, with something that Governor Hochul said in New York. Governor Hochul, of course, the heir apparent from the previous administration there in New York. But this is what Kathy Hochul said just a couple days ago. Listen to this, and I want to get your response on the other side.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things. And I want the world open up to all of them, because when you have their diverse voices innovating solutions through technology, then you're really addressing society's broader challenge.
Were you able to hear that, Jennifer?
I was not able to hear it, but I've seen the clip several times.
So Governor Hochul
still trending on Twitter.
Yeah, so Governor Hochul says that African American kids haven't even heard of a computer. Now, you are,
and she specifically pointed out, the poor, the black poors in the Bronx. so she's talking about the Bronx. She's in California talking about the Bronx of New York.
So you are a proud black African American, and we of course, as Republican conservatives, has been blamed as being the racist party. But yet these folks can say this kind of stuff all the time. They can say things like, blacks don't have, driver's licenses. They don't have IDs. They don't know how to use an ATM. But yet they seem to get away with it, while guys like us, we're the racists. We're the plantation owners. What say you?
Well, sadly, when you are around these circles, you realize, and I have been a good majority of my life, I've had the misfortune of being around, people who consider themselves in the upper echelon of society, the politicians, the educators, blah, blah, blah. And most of them don't know black people. Probably have never stepped foot in a black neighborhood. They only know whatever theory gets spouted to them from their research books and MSNBC and, whoever else they deem as a authority on these matters. The stupidity of it, which cracks me up, is that there is a institute or a academy right in the Bronx called the Bronx Engineering and Technology Academy.
Oh my goodness.
You say something that's stupid and you have an academy for K through 12 kids that focuses in on technology. It boggles the mind.
Jennifer, I know that the Democrats have been saying for the last 30, 40 years now that the Republican Party is the party of the rich. But would you say that that is actually kind of starting to switch? It seems like the Democrats are the party of the rich and the party of the out of touch, and as Sean Hannity would say, the limousine liberals, if you will. Do you think that switch is happening, that there is this apparent notion that the Democrats are actually part of the rich and the Republicans are actually the party of every man?
Yeah, I mean, it always has been that way, but they have had enough spokespeople to paint themselves in a certain light, particularly, with the unions that used to be, the working man. But now people realize, they're thankfully with the internet and people getting out of the whole mainstream media complex, people are realizing that, the people who are spouting all this nonsense, particularly in California with crime, the people talking about, there's nothing wrong and crime's going down, are the people who have armed security or live in gated mansions.
Absolutely.
The people sitting up on the street, walking Hollywood Boulevard or, living near Hollywood Boulevard, they're the ones suffering.
Yeah. Let's pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about Trump and all the salacious information that came out the last couple of days. Did you sit there with your popcorn and listen to that wonderful tawdry testimony from Stormy Daniels?
I did not. I mean, she's probably drunk anyway or something. But
I'm so
no.
surprised you didn't enjoy listening to that rather tawdry description that even the judge had to say, hey, listen, we need to be careful what we're saying here.
Yeah, exactly. And then refused to deem it a mistrial because she just said all types of disgusting stuff and gave away some of the farm. It's like,
absolutely.
How is that not a mistrial? This is, I think I said the last time I was on that it's a clown show.
Yeah.
He got his clown show, and this is just the continuation of the clown show. But it's falling apart, and they're the ones looking the idiots, not Trump.
And I want to say this too, Jen, and I want you to comment on this as well. You just said it. The Alvin Bragg case is falling apart. It essentially, even CNN is acknowledging this. The Georgia court just yesterday, the Georgia Court of Appeals just delivered bad news to Fani Willis. They're actually going to hear the appeal to have her disqualified from the case. And then we also heard that a judge indefinitely postpones Trump's classified documents trial. So now Jack the Ripper can't go forward with this at least before November of this year. So what do you think's going on? I mean, things seem to be kind of imploding on this whole warfare narrative. What do you say, Jen?
It's imploding because, again, they didn't have their ducks in a row. Their focus is not let's uphold the rule of law. Their focus is let's get Trump.
Yeah.
And you can't run or at least successfully run a legal case based on political means. And what's helping Trump tremendously, and they didn't think it would, is this gag order. So he's able to go in front of, before he goes into the hearing, and when he comes out of the hearing in New York, he can go before the cameras and constantly remind them, I'm under gag order. This is not, this is not constitutional. It's like people are seeing the ridiculousness of it as well as how wrong it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it is not, if they're doing it to Trump now, they're going to do it to someone else later. And frankly, going back to black people, they have been doing it to many black people in the past, and some currently. And they're doing it to the J6, defendants. So you've got this all going on and people are paying attention. And then the fact that they don't have anything holding these cases together, or they're doing the exact same thing that they're accusing Trump of, and it's now being exposed, is not helping them.
Yeah. I want to pivot quickly to this, all the college unrest that is happening nationally. Obviously, in our backyard here in Southern California, both USC, UCLA are absolute messes. We have a student from our church that attends UCLA who had to come home because of all the unrest. And, they're paying good money for an education at UCLA, but yet now they're going into remote classes. They can't go back to classes this whole week in UCLA. Now, let me ask you a question. If somehow, some way on UCLA campus or USC or Columbia, let's say a bunch of Trump supporters, students, set up a bunch of tents, they're all wearing red hats, saying, "Make America Great Again," how do you think they would be treated as opposed to these Gaza protesters?
Oh, they would be run off the quad like a rail. And there actually is video somewhere on the internet where that has been done, where someone, either didn't agree with someone's abortion stance or someone just had a nice little pro-life tent set up. And someone comes along and totally destroys it or gets into a fight with them, assaults them. It's happened.
Yeah.
And yet these, protesters are treated like kid gloves. I think it's Columbia or maybe it's George Washington University. I'm not sure. One of them where they're going on a hunger strike. And nobody's feeding them.
No vegetables for a week.
Yeah. It's just so sad. They're not paying any attention to their demands. And it's like, what kind of protester are you?
Yeah.
Can't suffer a little hardship for your cause. It really is ridiculous how they are, again, being particular and being biased about whose cause they will uphold and say, oh, they have a right to protest, and who they want to make the criminal and who they want to create fear over.
Yeah, it's amazing to me, Jennifer, that, someone like Ben Shapiro or you name the conservative guy that comes on campus to just make a speech. It's amazing how the leadership on the campus and the administration is rock solid about not having them come on because they're going to cause all kinds of commotion with the student body because they're all a bunch of snowflakes. But yet when it comes to these college protests, I mean, mum's the word. Most of these administrators have said barely anything.
Yeah, not said anything. And then when Jewish students rightly complained and rightly said this is unfair, they're like, well, we can't do anything about it. Our hands are tied. They have a right to peacefully protest. Yeah. It's this both sides thing that they're trying to play, both ends against the middle, and it's just not working. It's very transparent, and rightly parents are saying no more of this. I'm sure they're getting all types of withdrawal letters, resignation letter, cancellation of loans and FAFSA and all of that stuff because they're just not going to put up with it anymore.
Yeah, I think the federal government needs to divest from these universities, not so much Israel divesting from, or these college universities divesting from Israel, but that's a topic for another day, Jennifer. Let me ask you this question. Pivot back to Trump real quick. We're getting closer and closer now. I think by mid-June or something like that, we should know a little bit about who the potential VP pick is for President Donald J. Trump. Who does Jennifer Oliver O'Connell think would be a good VP choice that would bring balance to the ticket and maybe some confidence from certain sections of the Republican Party to vote for Trump?
If I was a Trump advisor, I would definitely be pushing forward Byron Donalds.
Okay.
And I wrote an entire article about it on Red States, just speculating. Mm-hmm. But if you want to talk about getting a percentage of the vote, polls are showing that African Americans, particularly black men, are moving toward Trump.
Yeah.
And I think Byron Donalds getting on the ticket would frankly cement that, because they have, they may not necessarily want to be Republicans, but they have a lot of respect for him as a politician, not only in his own state, but around the nation.
Let me offer a little pushback on that, if I could, Jen. Why Byron Donaldson and not Tim Scott?
Because as much as I love Tim Scott and love his story and it's inspirational, one, he's a bit old. He's pretty much in the same age category as Trump, or heading in that direction in his 60s. And Byron Donalds is a millennial, and he's speaking to a certain generation.
Okay.
And that generation is going to vote now. Whereas Scott's been in the Senate a long, long time, hasn't done a whole lot that's moved the needle.
And when you look at all the trend lines in terms of the November election, you've got Trump leading in the national popular vote. He has now for weeks and weeks, which is completely amazing considering he never did that in 2016. He never did that in 2020. And in all the states that count, he seems to be ahead. Do you think this is a huge psyop, or are the polls actually telling the truth?
It's hard to know. It really is. I mean, it could be a psyop. It could be polls actually reflecting reality. And I go with Rush on this one, that this early in the game, polls are kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
They kind of give you an idea of sentiment, but they're not hard and fast. This could happen.
Well, there's no doubt. There's no doubt, Jennifer, this thing's going to get tighter and tighter as we get closer and closer. There's no doubt. But I'm glad that you invoked the El Rush bow right there, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, he really is. I'm glad he's in glory and that he's out of pain, but
Absolutely.
He really is greatly missed.
I'm going to give you the last 1 minute here. You got any new articles that are dropping on Red State or 1819 News? Go ahead and pitch it real quick.
Certainly. I just dropped an article about Kristi Noem, her political demise.
Bang! And, kill that dog.
Yeah. It's and frankly, I liked Kristi Noem, so it's kind of sad to see and tragic to see. But it's just my own perspective on the whys of what I don't know why she killed her political career, but pretty much her political career is probably non-existent.
Probably not on the VP list, I would assume. So.
Definitely not.
Well, Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, thank you so much again for coming on Politics in the Pulpit. It's always a joy to hear not only your perspective, but also read your perspective. If you want to catch her, you can catch her on Red State and also opinion writer at 1819 News. And you can catch her as the Girl Turns, wonderful yoga instructor. I can't wait to get into yoga. We'll catch you in just a minute with Eric Early on the other side of the break. All right, we're back here live on Politics in the Pulpit. This is the Bishop of Santa Clarita, Pastor Jerry Cook. It was great to have Jennifer Oliver O'Connell from Red State just a few minutes ago. And speaking of Red State, there is a article that was just dropped, I believe it was yesterday, on the House Committee on COVID request release of unredacted documents hinting at China lab leak origin and cover-up. Now, folks, it's amazing. Here we are, almost 4 years removed from March of 2020 when all of this stuff went down. And actually, we're actually 4 years removed from that. And of course, many of us were saying things like, this is from China, this is from that lab, this is not from nature, this is not from some bat market somewhere in the middle of China. I know that was the theory that the left really, really wanted us to swallow. But here, the House of Representatives Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic are now asking for some unredacted documents on this thing, hinting that China and the CCP covered this whole thing up. Let's pray and hope that we get some answers on this, because we know that people like Dr. Fauci need to be held accountable. because the virus was bad, but the response by our government to the virus was far worse. We are joined now by Eric Early, a friend of the show, a friend of this preacher, and somebody that I voted for to take the place of Dianne Feinstein. But Eric, good to have you in today. Hello.
Always great being with you, Jerry.
Eric, because we can't get Steve Garvey to call into a show like this, but it's a lot. I don't know why he has an aversion to more of a grassroots approach. I think he just has a particular plan or a scheme or a method to his madness, I assume. But we appreciate your availability on our show. So I want to ask you, how do you think, if you were to grade Garvey from A to F, how's he doing?
Well, from a standpoint of the number of votes he got to go into what I call round two, from the primary into the general election, that's basically a B plus or an A. He got the votes I would have liked to have gotten. But as far as how he is doing as a candidate, I think he's a C at best, frankly.
Yeah.
And I'll be happy to explain why if you'd like to hear.
Eric, you're on. Explain. Tell our listeners why.
Well, he is the Republican candidate in this state for U.S. Senate against a national disgrace, a danger to the nation, named Adam Schiff. And you'd be hard-pressed to find out where Garvey really stands on just about anything. And it goes along with sort of what you were saying at the beginning. It sounds like you've been trying to get him on your show without luck, and he never appears anywhere. I hear nothing from him. Every once in a while I hear a very milquetoast nothing statement from him on a Fox channel. But we're living in really really critical times right now. Our country is on edge. The world is on edge, and a U.S. Senate candidate really should be able to tell the people exactly where he stands on really all the critical issues of the day. So from that stand, I'm very disappointed with him. He won't even come out and say whether or not he'll vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden, which is disgusting to me. If you're a Republican Senate candidate, much less the leading Republican Senate candidate in the state, I think a lot of it has to do with who his handlers are, who are these very moderate types behind the scenes, and I think they're controlling him to the point where we have what we're with right now. But come on now, you're the Republican Senate candidate. I get how they're all afraid to say that they're supporting Donald Trump, but come out and say yes, of course, between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, of course I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And don't be scared to say it, Steve. And then if you get attacked by the mainstream media, have what it takes to get up there and explain to them exactly why you said it. So in just about every regard, I'm very disappointed with him as a candidate, although in one respect, I appreciate what he did, and that's why I didn't go lower than a C, and that is he is one of the only candidates running in the state of California that I've seen that has actually taken a firm position with respect to these lunatics that have been going after Israel and supporting Hamas on these campuses, and his position was very firm, and he is very much against those folks who are doing that violent protesting.
Yeah, I call them mini Gaza encampments, if you will.
Exactly. They're mini Gazas. And so from that standpoint, I give Steve a high grade. But other than that, I'm still waiting to see where he really stands on things.
Well, it's interesting. You ran against Steve Garvey, and Steve Garvey will not say who he's going to vote for. But on the opposite of this, you also ran against Nathan Hochman, who is actually telling us who he's going to vote for in November, and it's not Donald Trump. So what can you tell us about Nathan? Now, before you do, I'm going to be completely transparent as I was at the top of the hour. Nathan has agreed to come on this show in June, and we're glad about that. And we're going to give him a fair conversation here. And also, I had a great opportunity to speak with him privately in my office not too long ago. And so he is basically telling everyone, I'm not voting for Trump, I'm voting for Biden. And why do you think these guys in the middle of the road, mushy middle, feel like they need to televise that and telegraph that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I ran against Nathan Hochman for Attorney General in the race before the U.S. Senate race, and he and I got very close to which one of the two of us would have ended up in the top two in that race to go against a guy I believe is a flat-out Marxist who's our Attorney General, Rob Bonta.
Yeah.
So I came very close in that one, but in about the week or two leading up to that primary race, Mr. Hochman was able to get another $400,000 or $500,000, throw it in, do some advertising, and I was on the outside looking in. But listen, I always believed when I was running against him, he was calling himself a Republican. All right, and when I was running against him, I knew this guy's not a Republican. I would just watch. I mean, he would never come out and say anything about Trump then. I mean, the only thing you heard was something like he forgot who he voted for or something like that. It was just ridiculous. But I always just believed that this was not a guy with Republican principles or Republican core values, and I felt like he was leading along improperly a lot of people in the state Republican Party. And so, sure enough, immediately after he lost to Bonta in the general election, he announces that he is an independent. He converted to an independent. I, of course, was not surprised at all, even though I still think he's really a Democrat. And then, as you said, like about 2 weeks ago, he comes out and says what you said he said. He is voting for and supporting that word too, Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And he is not voting for Donald Trump, and he didn't vote for Donald Trump in either of the last two elections either.
Yeah.
Which means that he likely voted for Hillary Clinton the first go round, and he likely voted for Joe Biden the second go round. And for somebody like me, these are huge problems. And along with some of the other positions that he takes, the best thing he's got going for him, he is running against the worst of the worst, and that is George Gascon.
Absolutely.
So from that standpoint, he really has to win this race.
Yeah.
I don't know how much better he will be than Gascon. I'm very concerned that Nathan Hochman has the potential to cave to the far left, which is a huge problem. But Gascon is in a world of his own in that regard.
Yeah. And what made you I want to just pick your brain on this thought here. I didn't put this in my text to you the other day about a conversation, but maybe we could talk about it here briefly. Something happened politically in Bonta's mind or something within the Democratic power structure of California for him to come out against Gascon's number two, and I forget her name right now, and I guess there's 11 indictments against her for inappropriately looking at information and maybe giving some of that information out about against Villanueva and others here in California. And I guess the statute of limitations on that would have lapsed 2 or 3 days later, but yet it was filed, and Bonta has moved on this. What do you think has happened in California politics? Are the Democrats trying to angle the fact that, hey, we're fair, we're going to go after our own guys too? You think that's kind of what's going on in their thinking?
I had the same exact question, because one would never think that a Bonta would go after somebody that could somehow harm Gascon at all in a lead up to an election for Gascon, because one would assume that Bonta strongly supports Gascon. They're cut from the same cloth. And so I had that very same question. Why, as a result, why did he then, bring these charges against one of, Gascon's, like his second or third in command? And so I actually had a conversation with somebody that, you know and trust and like a lot. I won't mention his name, but you may guess who I'm talking about. And his answer to me, because I asked him that very question, why did he do this? This is the last thing you would expect Bonta to do.
Yeah.
And he said, well, listen, Bonta basically had no choice because we were coming up to a statute of limitations, and he couldn't have been seen as allowing a statute of limitations like this on this particular subject to lapse. And then he basically said, but he doubts that anything serious in that action that he brought against Gascon's second or third in command will be happening between now and Election Day. So, he basically, the person, and that sounded believable to me. So, that's the only answer I can give you. Other than that, I was very surprised to see it, and there you have it.
So, what are your thoughts if you're to put on your hat and look into your crystal ball? Do you think that Hochman has it within him? Do you think he has enough in the power structure to be able to coalesce as many people together? Of all these factions, there were 12 people that ran, Eric, and when I asked Nathan how many of them have endorsed you publicly, I think only 2 of them have, and so many of them are still sitting on the sidelines. And the fact is, he is our only choice at this point, and obviously Gascon in another term would be the death nail for Los Angeles County. Do you think he has it within him to coalesce that pool of people in order to put this thing over in November?
I think he certainly has a chance to win because George Gascon is such a hated figure, and because this is clearly a race about law and order and public safety and being tough on crime or not being tough on crime. And people throughout Los Angeles County are living in fear of this crime explosion that's going on. And most people in Los Angeles County, and crosses party lines and socioeconomic lines, believe, rightly so, that these criminals are being treated with kid gloves. So by the current DA. So, given all of that, and given the fact that Hochman has the ability to raise money, he could potentially pull it off. Although I think that unfortunately, Gascon still has the upper hand, and it's really going to depend on whether Gascon can raise the many millions that he always seems to raise when he does run in these races. And the far left has always thrown him lots and lots of money. So it will be interesting. Would I have liked to have seen a better candidate than Mr. Hochman go against him? Absolutely. But he is what he is, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I know.
I would. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I know who you would have liked in there, and I think it's probably the same guy I would have liked. But the fact is, we have who we have, and what I'm noticing also when the mayor of L.A. and others are being asked to either say something positive about Gascon, they kind of demur. They don't really talk much about Gascon. It's almost like at right now, Gascon is toxic going into November, even with his own party. But real quick question: we're down to about 1 minute and 50 seconds here before we get to the break, Eric. But what's on Eric Early's agenda looking into the future? I know you've got a show that you're doing. Is it daily or weekly? Why don't you go ahead and pitch that real quick, if you would, sir?
I do a daily show on crntalk.com, which is then syndicated on radio stations around the country. It's great. I talk about all my positions on all the critical issues of the day. Totally unlike Mr. Garvey, my positions are out there, and I talk about my very, very firm positions on things. That's CRN, Cable Ralph Nancy Talk.com, live 11 a.m. to 12 noon, 5 days a week. I'm back running my law firm, great clients, represent, for example, One American News Network. I've been on the phone with the folks who own that station all day today about something going on. I'm representing another guy named Dr. Mercola, who was one of the doctors who was very much against the vaccine, and he's suing New York Times right now for defamation. I'm involved with that, representing Dr. Mercola, other great things. And as far as my future, I'm blessed. I've got a great family. My wife and I, We're enjoying sort of this time off from politics right now, but I'm starting to speak around. I'm the keynote speaker to the California Republican Assembly up at the California Republican Convention this coming or in 2 weekends, and I'm looking and I'm thinking about what my future will be politically.
Well,
but we'll see where that goes.
Eric, so thank you so much for joining us today on Politics in the Pulpit. You make sure you follow Eric early, and we'll definitely have you back on soon here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. All right, we're back here for our final segment on Politics and the Pulpit. Again, you're listening to KHTS AM 1220 and 98.1 FM, your hometown station. I wanted to kind of end this last segment with a book that I just received on Monday. I was at a preacher's fellowship, and usually at preacher's fellowship, something is given out, a book or something. And at this particular fellowship, the book that was handed out was called Controligarchs, Exposing the Billionaire Class, Their Secret Deals, and the Globalist Plot to Dominate Your Life. Boy, that's a mouthful, but it's written by Seamus Bruner, whom I've never heard of. However, the foreword is by Peter Schweitzer, and I think most of you probably know who Schweitzer is and some of his stuff on Clinton as well as on China and following the money there when it comes to China. But this book is interesting. On the front cover are 5 of the richest people on the globe: George Soros, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, of course, Mark Zuckerberg, and Klaus Schwab with the World Economic Forum. And, we all get frustrated with politics and politicians, but really they're just doing the biddings of the puppet masters that are behind the scenes. And this is not a conspiracy book. This has been copiously researched. There are endless endnotes in the bibliography section of this book, and I would encourage all of you out there to grab this book. Again, it's called Controligarchs, written by Seamus Bruner, and I wanted to quote from page 252 of this book. I haven't read all the way to 252 since Monday, but I skipped around a little bit. And in 1958, former FBI investigator W. Cleon Skousen published a book titled The Naked Communist that identified a list of current communist goals. And again, this is 1958. And these communist goals were immortalized in the U.S. congressional record in 1963, ironically the year that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And 20 of the communists' 45 goals are worth considering, just how the global movement has achieved some of these goals and objectives just in the last 60 plus years. And I want to just list a few of these, and you tell me just how much they have achieved in the 60 years since these particular goals were immortalized in the U.S. congressional record. The first is this: infiltrate and gain control of big business and unions. And when you think of the 5 people that are on the cover of this book, we're talking big business when it comes to Meta, when it comes to Microsoft, when it comes to the Washington Post. These are all owned by the mecca millionaires and billionaires of the globe. So they have definitely infiltrated and gained control of big business and unions. Just think about the unions for a minute. Most of the union workers, most of them will probably cast a vote for Donald Trump, but all the union bosses, the bigwigs, the guys that have their strings pulled by some of these bigwigs, they're all voting for the Democrat. Here's the second objective of the communist goals: emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. That's happening right now. There's a war happening within our school boards where parents are rising up and they can see that there's this separation happening between those that are teaching our kids at school and somehow trying to somehow say that the morals and spiritual guidance they're getting from mom and dad at home is somehow deficient, and we need to somehow emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. How about this? Third objective of the communist goals: discredit the family as an institution and encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Isn't that where we are? The family institution of one man, one woman, and children has been highly discredited, and now it's some hybrid of whatever the progressive left wants it to be. Here's the fourth objective: present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. I mean, think about, this is 1958 when these goals were put out. In 1963, they were immortalized in the U.S. Congressional Record. And here we are 60 plus years later, and this is playing out just as these communists have desired. We're living in a time where degeneracy and promiscuity are being normalized. They're being looked at as natural, and anybody who would have any pushback towards that are abnormal and are unnatural and are deemed unhealthy. Here's the fifth one: infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Do you know what is happening within broad evangelicalism? Good, solid Bible preachers are being replaced by a bunch of social woke warriors that are not preaching the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ and believe in a literal interpretation of the Bible. You've got a bunch of wokesters that are pushing a socialist, social justice, DEI type of an agenda under the cloak of Christianity. I'll give you one more: discredit the American founding fathers as selfish aristocrats and racists. Folks, there are 20 plus more objectives here. And you've got to get this book called Controligarchs. It is so sad to be able to see this unfolding before our very eyes. And what's even more discouraging is how many pastors are not speaking up sufficiently about this in their pulpits. Now, that's not a problem for this preacher and for the Freedom's Way Baptist Church, but is it a problem for some of the churches that you might be attending? Maybe you should get this book in the hands of your pastor. And if they automatically shun you and push the book away and say it's a bunch of conspiracies, why not say, don't judge a book by its cover, read it first, and then come to a conclusion? Well, it's been our pleasure today to join you here on Politics in the Pulpit. We're looking forward to having Nathan Hochman here a little bit, and then perhaps Dennis Prager. But we'll catch you back here next Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat channel here on Politics in the Pulpit on your
You've been
hometown
listening
station.
to Politics in the Pulpit with Pastor Jerry Cook.